Strategy and ambition. In Wang Yi visit China's long Africa game. Since 2014, when he became foreign minister, Wang has visited 35 African countries during his annual visits. When Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi visited Eritrea, Kenya, and Comoros in the first week of January as part of a five-nation tour that also included Maldives and Sri Lanka, he was observing a 32-year-old Benzing ritual of visiting Africa at the beginning of every year. In fact, China links with the continent to go back farther than the last 3 decades. Old ties in the Cold War years as the US and Soviet Union jousted for influence over Africa, China maintained an ideological presence on the continent. In 1966, after Quen Nkrumah was ousted in a coup while he was in Beijing, the Chinese put up Ghanaian independence leader for a few days before he decided to leave for Guinea. The first Chinese infrastructure project on the continent was the 1860 kilometer Tanzania Zambia railway in the 1970s, the first transnational railway in Africa, which, in addition to carrying passengers, transported ore from Zambian copper mines to the port city of Dar es Salaam in Tanzania. Since the 1990s, China has successfully used its old ties with several African countries to remodel the relationship using the abundant natural resources of the continent to service its own massive growth. Current visit. Since 2014, when he became the foreign minister, Wang has visited 35 African countries during his annual visits. This year's tour followed the triennial ministerial conference of the Forum for China Africa Cooperation in Dakar, Senegal, in December 2021, when Wang also visited Ethiopia in an expression of solidarity with Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed in the civil war in Tigray and against the role of external forces led the United States in fueling the conflict. Wang's visit last week to Ethiopia, which has backed the Ethiopian leader, was in the sense of an extension of the earlier visit to Addis Ababa. In Kenya, Wang took part in completion ceremony of the Chinese-built oil terminal at the port city of Mombasa. China has undertaken major belt and road initiatives in Kenya, including building a railway line from the capital Nairobi to Mombasa. In the Comoros island of Mozambique, he promised more development assistance. Strategic ambitions. Wang announced a special envoy to the Horn of Africa, where Eritrea, Ethiopia, Somalia, Djibouti, and Kenya are located. It was an indication of the strategic importance of this Indian Ocean region for China, as well as its political and economic clout, plus the aspirations to play the role of a mediator in the region's conflict. Since 2017, Beijing has had a military base in Djibouti with 400 soldiers of the PLA in close proximity to a French and an American base. The Chinese built railway line connects Djibouti to the Ethiopian capital Addis Ababa. Loans and trade. For a dozen years, China had been Africa's biggest trading partner. Two-way trade in 2020 was 187 billion, according to the China Africa Annual Economics and Trade Relationship Report 2021, released last September. The balance of trade is heavily in favor of China. According to the report, China invested 2.96 billion in Africa in 2020, an increase of 9.5% over 2019, making it one of the largest investors in Africa. Data collated by the China Africa Research Initiative of the Johns Hopkins School of Advanced International Studies shows China's FDI stock in 2019 totaled 44.4 billion, ahead of the United States. The top 5 American recipients of Chinese investments are South Africa, the Democratic Republic of Congo, Angola, Ethiopia, and Zambia. While the main investments in countries across Africa are in infrastructure, construction projects, and mining, China is also investing in transport, scientific research, and services sector. Size Carry estimates that between 2000 to 2019, Chinese financiers signed 1141 loan agreements worth 153 billion. The biggest chunk of this going to transport, power, and mining sectors in that order. The top loan receiving countries from 2010 to 2018 were Angola, Ethiopia, Zambia, Kenya, and Nigeria. Tussle with the US. The rivalry between the US and China in Africa have been simmering for long, but it has come into sharper focus over the last few years with the deterioration of bilateral relations in the Trump years and the increasing tensions in the Indo-Pacific. The US realizes that China has made friends in Africa with its money, ports, railways, and other infrastructure projects under BRI and is now seeking to offer counter with measures such as Development Finance Corporation to be deployed by Biden administration for G7's Build Back Better World initiative. In December, the DFC announced the launch of new platform designed to boost investment in fragile and conflict affected states in Africa. Thank you.